We did notice yesterday that she said, even though she had short-term memory loss, that there was a crisis at the, and it's something that can be treated with ginkgo biloba if you're at home. But if you, and she did say there was a crisis at the border. And can I be naive enough to think that maybe there might be some emergency action going on behind the scenes? Maybe if you do this, I do that type thing?
Well, we're always in contact with people on the Hill, but it should be noted, as you just said, not only did Speaker Pelosi mock and deride Fox News for covering the real crisis and the caravan actually on the southern border, but this was right after the president gave an Oval Office address, his first one of his presidency, directly to the American people, outlining the crisis we face, and they came on and said it was manufactured. Now she blew right past that, as though she was always on board with where we were as far as it being a crisis. I mean, Barack Obama called it a humanitarian crisis in 2014 in the Rose Garden.
And he came back and
Trump is considering using an obscure law from 1807 to combat America's immigration problem.
And as CBS 4's Natalie Brand shows us, the Insurrection Act allows the military to round up undocumented immigrants already inside the country.
President Trump is warning undocumented immigrants they will be removed from the country. He tweeted this morning saying, quote, "Please do not make yourselves too comfortable. You will be leaving soon." The administration is reportedly considering using a little-known law to allow the military to round up immigrants already in the U.S. The Insurrection Act allows the president to deploy military troops within the U.S. to put down lawlessness, insurrection, and rebellion. The conservative Daily Caller first reported the possibility, quoting multiple senior administration officials. Deputy White House Press Secretary Hogan Gidley was asked about this on Fox and Friends this morning.
Is the administration considering the Insurrection Act?
Look, the president has been very clear. He's going to do everything within his...
Is that a yes or a no?
He is going to do everything within his legal authority to protect the American people and families across this country. No, I'm just saying there are lots of tools at his disposal. We haven't used them all, and we're looking at ways to protect the American people.
President Trump is also calling on Democratic lawmakers today to support his newly unveiled proposal to change the legal immigration system in the United States. But the plan does not address the estimated 11 million undocumented immigrants already here. The administration may also be targeting employers who hire undocumented immigrants. The New York Times reports since March, the IRS has sent letters to 570,000 businesses warning some of their employees do not match their Social Security numbers. The letters do not threaten employers with enforcement action or penalties, but many businesses in hospitality, construction, and agriculture say they're nervous. Natalie Brand, CBS News, the White House.
This wouldn't be the first time the Insurrection Act was invoked. President George H.W. Bush used it in 1992 to quell the Los Angeles riots. And Eisenhower used it back in 1957 to enforce school desegregation in the South.
We did notice yesterday that she said, even though she had short-term memory loss, that there was a crisis at the, and it's something that can be treated with ginkgo biloba if you're at home. But if you, and she did say there was a crisis at the border. And can I be naive enough to think that maybe there might be some emergency action going on behind the scenes? Maybe if you do this, I do that type thing?
Well, we're always in contact with people on the Hill, but it should be noted, as you just said, not only did Speaker Pelosi mock and deride Fox News for covering the real crisis and the caravan actually on the southern border, but this was right after the president gave an Oval Office address, his first one of his presidency, directly to the American people, outlining the crisis we face, and they came on and said it was manufactured. Now she blew right past that, as though she was always on board with where we were as far as it being a crisis. I mean, Barack Obama called it a humanitarian crisis in 2014 in the Rose Garden.
And he came back and said it again. It's worse.
Jay Johnson said it's the size of Orlando, the March numbers and the April numbers. Brian went down there, interviewed people. They're talking about it in Central America on TV, advertising. You can go in.
Absolutely. I mean, it's horrific what's going on down there, and our laws are set up in a way that are magnets for people to come here, because they know if they get into this country, step one foot on our soil, they're here. We've got to fix that.
There's a suggestion in, I think I was reading the Washington Post this morning, they were repeating what was in the Daily Caller yesterday about how people in the administration are talking about using the Insurrection Act, which hasn't been used in a long time. It lets the president use the military to combat lawlessness or rebellion or to remove illegal immigrants.
Right.
Is the administration considering the Insurrection Act?
Look, the president has been very clear. He's going to do everything within
his... Is that a yes or a no?
He is going to do everything within his legal authority to protect the American people and
yes.
families across this country. No, I'm just saying there are lots of tools at his disposal. We haven't used them all, and we're looking at ways to protect the American people.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Last time we used it, I believe, was the LA riots, where the military came in and said, we're going to need military presence there. This is something, the military's there, but they can't do as much as they want.
Well, what's so sad is that we're getting to this point in the first place. We can fix this now with Congress, and we can fix it in a lasting way that protects the American people. We've got to do it.
Get it done.
Absolutely.
Right. Hogan, thanks for making the trip today.
Empty threat by the president, though, to talk about busing people from the border into these sanctuary cities. He likes to create friction sometimes to jumpstart, he says, a Congress that's not acting.
You say friction, I say he's trying to pit Americans against each other and make us less safe, because what you're seeing now...
So you take the threat seriously?
I take this. He's injecting fear into our country. And so if he was looking to solve a problem, he wouldn't be doing things to divide this country against itself. Beware of anybody that's trying to tell you to be afraid in the strongest country in the world, as opposed to showing our strength and our courage by pulling people together to find common sense solutions to solve this problem.
Which is to legalize anybody that can get here, to encourage even more. But don't bring them to the Democrats' towns, bring them to your town. Well, it's happening. President Trump plans to invoke Insurrection Act to remove illegal aliens from the United States and secure the collapsed border that is under globalist and UN attack. This country is under globalist attack, just like the European Union was established to attack the nation states and absorb them to a larger system of bankruptcy into a world government. And now this is the only act that the president can carry out that will have any chance of stopping what is unfolding. They've built refugee centers all over Central and South America. They are bringing in invaders from all over the world. In yesterday's stack, there was an article about 200 African invaders called migrants at the Texas border demanding to be let in. Over 100,000 a month are just released now into the United States. It's estimated 5 times that aren't even being caught. And many areas of the country now resemble giant open sewers. ICE to move 225,000 illegals across the country, thousands more to South Florida. And that will only be the beginning. Millions and millions and millions are on their way. The full story is up on newswars.com. Trump plans to invoke Insurrection Act to boot illegal immigrants. But, you know, it's bigger than that headline. This is to secure our borders. You see the numbers where ICE says that on any given day, it's double the previous records. And some days it's triple the previous records. I'm going to say that again. On an average day, there are double the numbers of illegal aliens being caught coming in to the United States. Double on any given day of the previous record. Some days it's triple the previous record. Mexico has some of the strongest immigration laws in the world. 6 months to a year, hard labor if you get caught. But that's only now if you try to stay. If you try to transit through Mexico, then you're allowed to come up, and the United Nations gives them $1,000 debit cards with no name on it per leg of the trip to get here from Africa, from Europe, from Asia, from the Middle East, via Latin America. And now the dam has broken. The floodgates are wide open. And these individuals are pouring in mass. Upwards of 30% of the so-called families that get caught aren't families. They're adults smuggling children, in many cases, who've been kidnapped. Remember, when you fly into the U.S. and they check your ID and make sure that your passport is real, they might ask you 30 seconds of questions. That's not against the Fourth Amendment. You're at a national border. But then if you just cross illegally, you're loaded on buses and delivered to God knows where. And remember, the Senate's own report last year admitted many of the children that came across under Obama ended up in child sex slavery and were being trafficked. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an incredibly historic time to be alive. I've been encouraging Trump since last year to declare a national emergency as commander-in-chief, and then he can direct the Defense Department money as he sees fit under that emergency. Instead, he declared a law enforcement emergency on funding to work with Congress. That's not a real national emergency. Dwight D. Eisenhower in the late 50s declared this emergency when millions were coming in illegally and deported them. No nation that doesn't control its borders is a nation any longer. So it's here, ladies and gentlemen. What an incredible time to be alive. This is being reported by very reputable publications like Daily Caller that have reporters inside the White House. And the president has floated the idea and it says he's getting ready to do it. President Trump plans to invoke Insurrection Act, so it's happening, to remove illegal aliens, secure the borders of the United States. President Trump is planning on invoking the Insurrection Act. The Daily Caller's Amber Athey reported that multiple senior Trump administration officials said President Trump will soon invoke the tremendous powers, close quote, of the act to get rid of illegal aliens leeching off the fat of the land. We're doing the Insurrection Act, one official said. Under the Insurrection Act of 1807, the president has the authority to use the National Guard and military in order to combat unlawful obstruction or rebellion. And what do you have with the Democratic Party? Sanctuary cities telling ICE, telling MS-13 when ICE is coming. This is the breakdown of civilization. This is the breakdown of law. This is the left and the globalist creating anarchy, which is the absence of law. Martial law is the institution of emergency rule overriding regular law because regular law can no longer be enforced. I'm an expert on martial law. I've made 4 films on martial law because Bill Clinton and others were planning martial law to take our guns using people rioting nationwide as the pretext. This is civil emergency martial law to counter the emergency that the globalists have already brought us into, and only an emergency can counter that. Remember all the documents we got last year where Antifa is planning to trigger race war and martial law nationwide. That's what Netflix and Hollywood and ABC and NBC and CBS and CNN and MSNBC, it's all race, 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 race. No borders, no wall, no USA at all. Having a border, period, is evil. Everybody else can have one, but we can't. So again, when we come back, I'll get into the act itself. We've posted the full act up on Infowars.com in the live broadcast page today. We're also going to get into remarks by the president and the latest with ICE and what's unfolding on all of those fronts today. But continuing, ladies and gentlemen, this is an incredible time to be alive and to be pushed into this situation. We'll be going over 10 U.S. Code 252, use of militia and armed forces to enforce federal authority. Under the Insurrection Act 1807, the president has the authority to use the National Guard and military in order to combat unlawful obstruction or rebellion within U.S. borders. The act was first invoked in 1992. It was also done similarly by Eisenhower, by George H.W. Bush to quell Los Angeles riots, and was also again used by Eisenhower in 57 to enforce school desegregation in the South. So when you have local governments violating federal law, state governments violating federal law, or foreign groups inside violating federal law, you either stand up to it or the federalist system is over because the federal government is abdicated its authority and handed it over. So this is a classical time to use this when there are attempts to implode the nation state from without and from within. So we will go over all of this when we return on the other side. But obviously, The left is going to oppose this. They're going to claim that Trump's trying to be a dictator. They're going to claim that anybody that's here needs to be given all the money they want and all the free stuff they want, accelerating the collapse of the country. What has Beto said? What has AOC said? What has de Blasio said? They all say you deserve everything free, even if you don't want to work. In the new Green Deal that Sanders is pushing, everything is free except for the people we're going to enslave to pay for you to sit on your fat ass. But of course, once the globalists have imploded the country, no one will get anything free. We'll be like Venezuela, engaging in cannibalism. Think about how there have been attempts to suspend common sense and logic. There are 800 million people in Latin America. There are billions in other parts of the third world. And the UN and George Soros, from the Middle East to Africa to Latin America to Asia, are paying for plane tickets and are giving people $1,000 debit cards with no one's name on it for each leg of the trip. And when they show up at the next refugee center, they're given bags of food, local cash, and $1,000 more. And I have mainline news admitting that there are hundreds of thousands of people now pouring in out of Canada from Latin America, Africa, and the Middle East with paid-for airline tickets by the UN with U.S. taxpayer money. This is war.
Inhumane and cruel, this is how community organizations refer to the possibility of President Trump ordering the deployment of the military to remove undocumented migrants.
It's inhumane to think that these people who already have so little with them and have so much to lose with their return back home, that they're really posing a danger to our country.
The Trump administration is considering invoking the Insurrection Act, which gives the president power to use the military force, but only in very specific cases of insurrection, domestic violence, unlawful combination, or conspiracy. A White House spokesperson speaking with Fox and Friends said that there are a lot of tools at the president's disposal, and they are looking at ways to protect the American people.
An invasion. It's like an invasion.
The president has referred to illegal immigration at the border as an invasion in many occasions.
We don't agree that it's an invasion. These are people who are exercising their legal rights to seek asylum in our country, and they're already facing, like I said, dangers back home if they're returned. So they're already coming with limited resources, and all they want is a chance to then provide for their families and themselves.
The administration will also be considering to declare the country completely full because of the massive migrant arrivals. According to the Department of Homeland Security, 4,000 families, adults and children cross the border every day, and the agency just doesn't have enough resources.
We need to have a system that works at the border. We're able to prevent people from crossing unlawfully and return them effectively.
Currently, 5,000 military troops are deployed at the border with Mexico. Experts say that if Trump tries to invoke the Insurrection Act, the White House will face legal challenges, questioning once again the president's powers.